Thank you very, very much. Now, it is structured because it says on there 4 p.m. I wouldn't mind not quitting, but I've always found that I have a real sort of a developed skill about quitting. I always watch a crowd pretty close, and I like to quit just before you do. You can tell when somebody quits. I mean, man, the screen just falls, and you keep on talking if you want to, but you're done. I mean, you're kidding nobody but yourself. So I'll be ahead of that, I guarantee you, and we'll wrap by 4. Let me mention one thing that, in fact, I'll go through a little bit. He was kind enough to have some copies made. This is the thing we used in that workshop. It's from my home group, and it's a thing we did, and it's kind of unusual to do, but, well, let me just tell you about that now, because it sort of sets the stage a little bit for at least how one group of folks set about doing a group that was awfully good. I've worked with folks a lot of different ways since I've been in AA, and I really believe that getting folks through the steps is a vital part of it. And there's no one way to do that. You know, I've taken folks through Marine Corps style in 14 weeks, and you can do it. I never have seen it hurt anybody. I never have. I don't know of any way that doesn't work for somebody, nor any way that works for everybody. So it's a matter of doing what you do. But one of the things that I've found in recent years that has been tremendously effective, from my perspective anyway, and from my observation, is taking folk through the book in a real thorough kind of way. Thorough is an understatement. The last group took an hour and a half every Tuesday for a year and a half. Was how long that took, and we were just about on time. And so doing those kind of big book. Oh, I thought I was being attacked. I surrender. I stumbled on it. I heard a guy talking about this, and it made sense to me. This idea of doing this extended big book workshop. I've done it one-on-one and all that kind of stuff. But that just made sense to me somehow. And so I just had a bunch of guys I sponsored and anybody else they wanted to bring, the first one I did. And I was just enormously impressed with it, enormously impressed. And it wasn't anything I did particularly. It was what the book did, of getting people intensely involved in the actions laid out in the book. And that's what the workshop does. And so over the years, and by the way, I mean, I almost feel like it's a setup when I do this. I've never known anybody that's gone through the entire process that's ever drunk again from any group. I think there's an absolute connection between intensive work in the program and success. I've never seen anybody OD from steps. Never seen anybody OD from service. I've seen an awful lot of people UD from lack of those things. And so when I found that method of doing that in the group, I liked it because I'm the type of fellow that's got a very willing heart. And what I found is that when you're willing to do things and you give it your best shot, you're going to be busy. And so I'm the type of guy that doesn't say no to anything coming up. If it's got to do with service, I don't say no. And so that causes a very busy schedule. And so that workshop idea appealed to me because I really like doing intensive work with new people in the program. But when you're on the go all the time, and I know some of you are probably challenged the same way, you're reluctant to take it on because you can't consistently be available. And with new people, that's an important thing, to be consistently available. So I started doing those workshops as a method of working intensely with folk without having to be constantly on the scene. And I'll tell you this, if I had the luxury of time and had the time to do it one-on-one, I wouldn't do it. Because what I found is that the group multiplies the power. And I don't like doing that one-on-one because that creates the Mr. Wonderful image, and I don't believe in that. I believe that I'm going to spend my life in groups, and if I don't learn to function effectively in groups, I'm going to be in some trouble. And so I really like that. And so I'm doing that, and over time, around in my little old small area like George talked about, I live in Podunk, North Carolina. It's just a little old routine place. And we started building up a group of folks that had been through that. And when you go through an experience like that, you'll tend to get charged up. And everybody's not in my group. And so if you don't have a vehicle, so to speak, for that energy, you'll start getting ill at ease and restless and discontent. And so I had a bunch of guys and gals that kept wanting to start a group. And I was, like my old group on Tuesday night, I was the founder of that group. And it's a little troubling when the captain of the ship starts to bail out. And I mean, I'm just one member, but I was the founder of that dude. You know, I wasn't mad at anybody. But anyway, I decided to do it. We dropped the word that we were going to be starting another group. And no trauma for anybody but me. And then, so we agreed to start a group. And I'll just introduce you to this because I think it has a lot to do with what ought to go into, at least from my standpoint, about going into developing a real group. We got this group together, and there's about 10 of us that were wanted to get in on the planning of this thing. And we met in the back of a guy's business. Now, I'm funny about meetings. I believe in quitting on time. I don't always do it, but I believe in it. And, and apparently enough other people do that they'll quit on me if I don't quit on them. And so I normally like to hold a meeting to an hour. I think folks are most productive during that hour. If you get in one of these long, brain-numbing things, that I think it works against the objective. And so we decided we'd meet for an hour. And we had 3 basic questions at the first meeting. One, well, let's just say out loud whether we want to do this thing or not. Well, that was a no-brainer almost, but it's important for folks to say and not just assume along, you know. So we said, yeah, everybody wanted to do it. You want to do it. We threw in $20 a piece for not earnest money, but just so we'd be self-supporting from day one. We threw that in, said we'd take it back. Nobody ever did. We lied. But that was within the limits, so we could do that. And then the next was, if we want a group, what kind do we want? What kind of a group? And what I said to the guys and what they said to me was, I was not interested in just another meeting. I had no interest in that whatsoever. I had a good group. What would I be giving up just to do something else similar? You know, it'd be pointless. And so if we're going to do one, let's do one for real. Let's do one that's got some special kind of value. And so now I'm a brainstorm type of guy. I really like brainstorming. You know what I'm talking about. Just take a board and just throw out what you think. I don't know about you, but I've noticed that my first thought is invariably my best thought. And I may spend 2 hours of debate, but it's circuitous debate because I always wind up right where I started. So I like brainstorming. I like to just go ahead and have an uncensored thought. You know, if you think something, throw it out there. We'll put it on the board. You don't have to defend it. Nobody's going to argue with it. Just put it up there. Rarely ever take anything down. What we did, in fact, this is a product of it right here, that, and I think there's plenty of these here. If not, he has unlimited funds for copies. None for airfare, but he got a lot for copies. I ought to go on Delta. What we did, I was chairing the meeting, and so I said, everybody name one factor, and if you think about it, you'd probably do the same thing. If you were going to start a new group, what's one thing that you would absolutely insist on having in that group? Some quality or factor or component. What's something you would insist on? Well, brainstorming is not everyday stuff to everybody. So I threw out the first one, and my first one became number one. I wanted mine to be number one. And so the first one on there was structure. Yeah, I like them. He just got structure, it's got purpose, it's laid out and all this kind of stuff. I find that when stuff is already resolved, then I can relax and enjoy it. If I try to put it together while I'm doing it, it usually winds up screwed up and aggravating me. And so I really like to have that, the what decided, then the how just fill in, you know. And so what we did, and believe it or not, we wound up with 19 items in 12 minutes. 12 minutes. The only change that occurred to any of them was just sort of evening out the thought, you know, like it's structured in, what are we talking about, group organization, meetings, services, and activities be planned with roles and responsibilities defined. That's what we're talking about. And so we did that after, but we got the thoughts out in 12 minutes, no change. And so we went through that in 12 minutes. What this became was what we call goals. This is what we want our group to achieve. And I won't go through all of this stuff, but it delineates the kinds of things that we want to be in place. Focus, conference preview literature, it's kind of was not a no-brainer, but we wanted that to be a fact in our group. Newcomers, given sound information about AA. I used some of that stuff you gave me from California in helping to do the newcomer deal. We set up a program for newcomers. So on and on. You know, all of these things we decided in 12 minutes. And in 5 years, we haven't changed them. Because they're basic things. They're fundamental things. And I don't know why there's so many pages to this. Oh, it's got the minutes on some stuff about what happened at the first meeting. I didn't mean for this to be on there. Yeah, he does. Yeah, in some budgets. The date. Oh, we were talking about barrier-free. One of the things, the second meeting, one of the things we resolved was that we wanted a place barrier-free. There wasn't a meeting place in our little town that had a barrier-free place. We got folks in wheelchairs. We got blind folks. Yeah, so we wanted that to be. We put 3 people out on a search team. They went out in one day, came back with a meeting place. We're still in. And great place, great place. So it was just a matter of just making fundamental decisions. But the important thing was that we would set out to do a group with a purpose. The name of our group might shock you. It's the Primary Purpose Group. And that's our business. That's what we're about. So every one of these goals is how we do that. We only had 19, so we added a 20th one, Rule 62. And we have more fun than most folks. We have a lot of fun in our meeting. We're serious as a heart attack. But because we enjoy what we're doing. We have a good time. And so there was one other thing that came out of that that's been tremendously important in our group is, you know, I mentioned where this group came from. This were a group of people who finished a workshop and they were pumped up. They were ready to go. So what we decided was that action was going to be the watchword in this group. That we would be an active group, not a think tank. And that everybody in the group would have a job. Or at least have an opportunity to turn one down. And preferably a job that would take them outside the group. Not just making coffee. I mean, that's vital. But not just that. Something would take them outside the group. So, and I'm not talking about long, drawn-out stuff. I'm talking about 3 meetings total, I believe, that we had on planning. We decided, in fact, it took me a while to realize it was already written out in the 3rd Legacy Manual, but we decided to set up service committees in that wheel-shaped thing with cooperation with professional community, public information, treatment facilities, correctional facilities. Grapevine, we added a newsletter, added a newcomer deal. We wound up with 10 service committees that we would staff. Well, the first time we got those 10 articulated, somebody said, well, where the devil are we going to get members? I said, it's already solved. I've just been counting. We've got 10 people, 10 committees. They're full. They're full. which one you want. And it was as simple as that. All you got to do then is add members. and so that's what we've been doing. You see what I'm talking about? If you want action, do action. And so everybody had a piece of the action there. Those committees are still functioning. We still do a lot of, we were talking about, we have some CPC PI things going on right now. To me, those are the things that make groups come alive. Not just having wonderful meeting and good speakers. We do that too. On speakers, I'll tell you what we said on speakers, that we wanted speakers who, I forgot how we said it. We wanted speakers that look like the people. We don't want everybody looking like Tom I. We want good-looking folks like me, ugly folk. we want different. We want different colored people. We want straight folk. We want gay folk. We want people who look like the world. And so we said we wanted diverse speakers. We want young speakers. We got a young fellow speaking at our meeting. I swear to God, he could go over and say he was a freshman at the high school, and anybody would take him in. Now, he looks like a little kid. And saw him Wednesday night, speaking at my group next week. He's sponsoring a 60-year-old man. And the old man saw me the other night, and he started telling me about that. He said, I just did my 5th step with him. And that little old kid, just a little old twig of a kid. But that's what we want. We want somebody that represents that. And so putting a group together was not just a matter of some monolithic way of doing business, but if you want to carry the message, get the right messengers, so that you never know who somebody's going to connect with. That was great fun, putting that together. It's the strongest group I've ever belonged to. I belonged to a ton of them, and I belonged to a lot of good ones. Started a lot of good ones. But this one is without doubt the most comprehensive thing that I've been involved in. I got a young fellow, that CPC chair. He's a young physician, and some of you met him. Mark, who I'm talking about, Dave. I hope he doesn't get the tape, but he was goofy as a loon when he came in the program, and I got him when he was about 2 years sober, and I swear that boy hadn't seen the landing field for a long time, and he's an anesthesiologist by profession, and he got himself mixed up with a patient quite often, and he was captured by the capturing authorities, and I think I spent most of my first year with him listening to him say, I will never be able to practice my profession. Nobody is going to take somebody who violated the anesthesia laws, and nobody's going to ever let him practice. And every time he would say that, I would always say to him, do you know who you're talking to? Yeah. I'm a guy that found AA in a maximum custody penitentiary and wound up being warden of a penitentiary. Every time I'd say that, he'd say, oh yeah. Today he's a card-toting anesthesiologist. And July he'll go into specialty. What is it they call it? The heart stuff. Cardiological anesthesia. Hey? What do you call it? Cardiology. Yeah, but the anesthesia part of it. He'll go into cardiological anesthesia. Jeez. I didn't have to know words like that till I started sponsoring yo-yos like him. But he's our CPC PI guy. And I tell you, some of those zany characteristics turned into such assets. He's just wild, as you would expect. He came to me one day and he said, can we put on a TV program in the meeting? I said, no, you can't put on a TV program, you dummy. He said, no. And I said, well, tell me what you're talking about. He was, that community doc deal that a lot of local channel he gets in and talks about ingrown toenails and stuff. He was a community doc guy on television. He said, all I got to do is take my program and bring the cameraman, and we'll set up some members with their backs to the camera and the room set up, and then I'll interview them like the community doc. Well, now, I would have never thought of that. I'm not that crazy. But it was a great program. A great program. That's exactly what he did. Wild, wild stuff. That same fellow is now doing a quarterly CPC thing at Duke University Medical School. Yeah. See what I'm talking about? A group, God knows what kind of talent you've got in it. But if it's just a one-dimensional thing where I just go in there and feed me, and never find a way to open that channel and let my contributions come out, wither and die, won't you? Won't last very long. I'll tell you one other thing about him. He's one of my favorite people. I'll tell you one other thing happened with him. He was celebrating his second anniversary, and he didn't know it. And we were having breakfast one morning, and I said, well, this is a big day coming up, big guy. And he said, what's that? And he always acts like it's just wonder. I mean, everything's just oh, really? And I said, yeah, it is. He said, what is it? And I said, it's your second anniversary. He said, oh, my God, I can't be there. And I said, oh, that's too bad. Why is it that you can't be there? And now he's in the Capture the Doc program. And they own him, life, limb, and future. And he said they're having a command performance deal, and every doc in the state has got to be there, especially me. And I said, well, that is really unfortunate, but it certainly tells me what our next meeting will be about. And he said, what's that? I said, it'll be about priorities. And he didn't really understand. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, when the things that happen to you as a result of your recovery become more important than what produces your recovery, your priorities are shot. And I tell you, young fella's face just drained. He turned gray. And he said, pardon the French, but he said, oh, shit. He said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll be there. Well, and he came in that night. He was dressed in a tux for the command performance, and he had on a zebra tie and a zebra cummerbund. And so I introduced him to everybody as the offspring of the mating of a zebra and a penguin. We had a great time, you know. And well, that's what he should have done, eh? Yeah, he got through with that, and he went on up there and made his obligatory appearance, and things are good. Yeah. And so I guess if there's a point to all that, it's not just a matter of having something that looks like guidelines or regulation. It's a matter of developing the things that lets a group carry out its purpose. And God, there's no limit to that. Yeah, and you talk about a group being that driving force from the grassroots. You imagine how strongly this fellow would feel about CPC being done well, or public information being done well. If there's going to be integrity and strength in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's how we have to develop it, so that it's not letters from New York, but it's people here letting our service structure provide strength to the service thing. Just telling me about going to be the DCM coming up. Great job. Great job. I'm going out as I'm alternate DCM right now, along with being the state chair for corrections. That's a great job. A lot of things being done in district stuff. So that's longer than I meant to talk about that. But to me, grab hold of one of those things, and it's just one example, and there's nothing brand new, nothing unique in that. It's just a matter of pulling together the tools we've got and focusing them in a group setting. And it's just been a tremendous thing. We never have planned to be, but we're one of the heaviest contributing groups in the state. We're not competing with anybody. But people who are involved in service, involved in the fellowship, are going to get involved in every way. And so, good stuff. Anyway, enough. Let's just talk a little if we can. Yeah.
Chet at the Jekyll Island deal a couple of weeks ago. scheduling a group inventory for January in my home group, which is traditional recovery, and you could call us fifth traditionalists as well. But I have enjoyed particularly this second session on the formulation of your own group. We had much the same process. Started out with 2 guys and then 3 guys, and basically we were sitting around gossiping because we were disappointed, somewhat resentful, and we were not getting what we wanted in going to the meetings we were going to. The phrase we commonly dropped the hat on was, you know, it was either the incredible weekend, the cat and the canary, or the dead dog. We weren't hearing recovery and solution stuff. For the process of about a year, we started talking. Then we started putting our heads together, and we decided to start a group. And then by invitation only, I mean, you know, there's some things, this is the way we did it. By invitation only, we had a larger meeting, 2 of them. Said, hey, this is what we want to do. We've invited you here because you seem to be, you know, one of us, if you will. Well, long story short, we got a group started. We've been in operation a year. By any standard of success, I don't know how you would rate us, but here's our format. Thursday night, big book study. You use the word intensive. We use about half of the meeting for reading. We discuss it the other half, and then on Monday night, we meet twice a week. On Monday night, the 2 chair people for the month coordinate, and on Monday night, we continue the discussion on the Thursday night reading. So we're really into the big book. We're having a lot of fun. Now here's the downside. Our membership has stayed the same. Attendance at meetings is about 80%. Some people can't come both nights of the week. But our members are loyal, solid, regular attending. Visitors usually don't come back more than once. And the feedback we're getting is they're too serious, they're too rigid, and they're too structured. And that one of the reasons that has led to our decision to do a group inventory. We have kind of concluded that, you know, all we have to do is suit up, show up, and keep doing what we're doing, because it's what we want for our recovery. We're working the solution here. One of the real downsides that we've noticed and we consider a problem is, what do we do about the newcomer, the beginner, the drunk? You see, we're not structured for them. Occasionally we get one that comes in, and if we're on page 67, no, we're not going to 12-step this guy. I will have to say that the situation you described, we have never had anybody show up at a meeting, any time or place where they got a pink slip or a blue slip or whatever, who hasn't been talked to and welcomed. We have greeters, and yeah, that's all. The parallel a lot of ways to what you did with this new group, and we're still looking for solutions.
Yeah, I think we run into some of that same kind of thing, that autonomy is an important word. It's also a word that can get sort of overstated in one direction at the expense of another. That, you know, a group is free to be the kind of group it wants to be, but it's also responsible to the next group. And so autonomy means that I'm the freedom to be who I am, as long as I don't interfere with your right to be who you are. And the tricky thing, and the thing that worries me some about our own group, is what kind of a neighbor are we to the next group? my core belief is that our group is no better than the worst group in town. We're part of the same deal. And just holding up one group as a shining paragon is not in the best interest. So it makes me nervous when I just hate it when somebody in our group says, I belong to the best group in the world. That's just not true in the first place. But it's an arrogant statement, and it's certainly not in the spirit of AA. So the way, I tell you what happened, I don't know why it happened like this, but we never sent out a single flyer or made a single phone call. The first night that we met, we filled a room. And I don't know how they learned about it. It's that old, if you build it, they'll come, I guess. The second night we met, we had to move. We didn't have authority, but we just bogarted the biggest room downstairs in the church. I told them after the fact that we had accidentally moved up there. But we have never circulated things other than later on we signed anniversary stuff. But to me, it's a matter. The two things I'm trying to sneak into that thing. Very important to maintain that good neighbor posture, so that I not only can take some good feeling about the solidity of my group, but what kind of connection do I have to the groups around me? One of the reasons I'm alternate DCM is because that gives me access to all the other groups in the district. And the guy sponsors a DCM. And so I think there's a responsibility that goes with it if you're one of the stronger, more structured groups. And one thing I would encourage you to take a look at would be that newcomer thing, because like we started our newcomer group, and for the committee met, and I know people think I'm a fool sometimes, and I act like it sometimes, but I said to the newcomer committee, why don't you start a newcomer meeting? And the guys in the group said, you didn't understand. We don't have any newcomers. I said, yeah, I understand that. So start a newcomer meeting. Well, they thought I was nuts, but they started a newcomer meeting. 40 people came the first night. 40. And that's word of mouth. We didn't call anybody. There's such a hunger for people to give solid, basic information about AA that folks will beat the door down. And so we just were avalanche with people coming in. And that's probably the most valuable thing that we have going in our group right now, is that newcomer group. A lot of power, a lot of energies in that. That'd be the only thing I'd in that inventory. I hope you'll take a look at that thing. Yeah, yeah, Mary. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know how much rope I got here. I'll beat you halfway. Okay. Say that one more time now.
How to involve the treatment folks that get bused to our meeting to feel like they're part of what we're doing?
That's a real good question. She's asking about how do you get people coming from treatment centers to feel like they're involved. How do you get them involved in our meeting? I don't know of a more troubling dilemma in the program than that thing of there's sort of a herd instinct that goes with it, particularly if you've got a shepherd with you. And so most people who come to meetings from facilities come in formation. They come in and they get in a cube on a van, and then when they get off the van, they look like robots. You come marching in a cube, and then they'll sit in a cube, and then the minute the meeting's over, they'll leave in a cube. Well, that's nice. If a meeting were all there is to Alcoholics Anonymous, that'd be fine. But sometimes a meeting may be the least important thing that goes on that night. What it misses is the preliminary stuff where you get acquainted with people, the fellowship afterward, eating cake you don't need, stuff like that. And so it's a real problem. I honestly believe that the way, and sometimes I'll make brash statements, but I sometimes think that those activities do more harm than good. in terms of introducing somebody to what Alcoholics Anonymous is. Alcoholics Anonymous is not just a discussion or a talk. It's a fellowship. It's a way of life. And when you give somebody that kind of a distorted view, I think there's a real problem with that. We try to infiltrate some stuff in our group. It's a hard thing to break up. We try to infiltrate. I mean, you can predict where people are going to sit. We have a bunch of women that come from the women's halfway house, and they're going to sit in the same place, almost same chairs. Well, I sit in the middle of them. I mean, I know I don't fit, and a lot of other people do, but it's just an attempt to try to break that up. The problem, I mentioned this about CPC, Cooperation Professional Community. I was telling your sweet husband that I think the worst job I personally have ever done on Cooperation Professional Community was I organized a meeting with the directors of 3 facilities that bring folks in. And it was a nice meeting. They fixed some good chicken. They provided a meal, and we met. But I swear to God, that was the biggest failure I have ever did. I was the guy that was leading it, and I made a bad mistake. I assumed that people who ran facilities had the same objectives that we had. That ain't necessarily so. Our objective with folk like that was to assimilate them into Alcoholics Anonymous and let them have a real experience. That's not necessarily the objective of somebody who's loading the van. Theirs is to keep them protected from getting too loosey-goosey in relationships and all that. And I thought, sure, we had an agenda that we didn't even need to establish. I thought it was a given agenda. Not so. And so you can profit from my error that assuming an agenda when you try to deal with folk like that is a bad mistake. If I have to do it again, if I get to do it again, what we'll do will be to negotiate an agenda before we meet and not announce an agenda to them. I probably said enough about that, but I'll say one more thing, though, that it's tremendously important to meet with folk. I'll give you one little scenario that happened. We had a fella came to me one night and he was talking about a group inventory. So somebody was talking about a group inventory. And he said, we need to do a group inventory. And I said, what for? And he said, we got too many addicts in here. Now, I tell you, I honestly had not noticed it. I mean, you run in a little bit of it once in a while, and I said, well, let me watch and see if I see the same thing you're talking about. He said, okay. And so I watched him. What it was a group of adolescents from a halfway house were coming over. And what happened was our fault, not theirs. Not theirs. We were asking them to read. See, AA meetings are conducted by alcoholics. And so it was our members doing that. And so it was overlooking it on our part that we were asking people who were not members to conduct a meeting. And so we had a little steering committee meeting and said, well, and we mapped out what we ought to do. Said that we ought to go over and talk to the director of that halfway house. And they asked me if I'd do that, and I said, sure. So I went over, and then the other thing was, that was the other group. And when we started a newcomer group out of this. But I went over and met with the lady that directed that facility and just told her, had a great meeting, told her that we had some open meetings and closed meetings and that these folks were coming to closed meetings. And she didn't know there was any such thing. We'd never bothered to tell her. We just assumed she knew. Well, that's a bad assumption. And she thanked me very much for coming and said, geez, I didn't know that. We can handle that. And then on our part, what we did was set up some open newcomer meetings so that people who are trapped in facilities or going through an experience in facilities can have an opportunity to sort out this mishmash language they hear and settle down to what they think they are. And so a newcomer meeting serves a great purpose for that kind of a thing. We rarely ever have any sort of problem whatsoever in doing that kind of thing. I'll tell you one other one that happened with Yeah, I tell you what happened with one other thing happened. On that paper thing I was talking about, that had bothered me for a long time. And it really did just seem like a horrible way to treat a new drunk, to have to brand him to come in there like that. And one day I was flying somewhere, and I was kind of just doodling down, what is it bothers me about that? What makes that so bad? So I wrote down 2 columns. One was advantages, perceived advantages. And I listed 10 things, being very generous. 10 things that people could see as advantage. All 10 of them were advantages to the supervisor, to the probation or parole supervisor. All 10 were clear advantages. I put question marks behind 3 that said they possibly could have some value for the client. I didn't really believe it, but I put a question mark just to leave an open mind, maybe, a little bit open. Then I listed disadvantages. What's wrong with that? And I believe it was 27 or 28 things that I listed. Like it's a second-class citizen. I mean, you might as well put a brand on his head. He comes in there wagging this thing, trying to ask, groveling to somebody, will you sign this? Now, I don't mind telling you, before we did something about it, I wouldn't sign them. But I would never just reject the guy. I'd say, Maureen does that. She'll be glad to do it. And so send them over there. See, I chickened out. I just passed it on. That's right. And there's one thing that I put on that list that surprised me, is that when I do that, signing, why wouldn't I do that? It makes me something different than I want to be to another alcoholic. It makes me a validator. It makes me a sort of an extension of that system, in that I'm saying, this guy has done his duty. That's not what I want to carry to somebody. And that's why it bothered me that. And so there's a whole bunch of things on there that, and I think that one drives more people away than it attracts, by far. Once in a while, you'll see somebody that has done that. Just like I said, anything will work for somebody. But I think an awful lot of people are driven away, given a bad taste. And so we set up an appointment, me and that doc. We went and did a CPC thing, and went over and met with the director of probation. And started meeting with the judges, but the judges aren't really the ones who do this. They put the power to it, but that's administered by probation folk. So we went to see the guy. And he first, like any agency guy's going to be, you could tell he was just sort of backing off a little, thought he was being attacked. And when we started talking about it, when we got to the one about how it changes the character of the relationship, he said, my God, I never thought of that. And it's because you're screwing up the resource with that. And man, it was downhill from there. And so now, I'm one who believes that you never want to make criticism that you're not willing to step in and do something about. And so we got through with our evaluation of that, and then we made some recommendations about 3 or 4 things that we thought would be workable. And so what followed was we set up a bunch of meetings with, just a few meetings with all of his parole officers. He wanted them to know what the deal was. And there has not been a piece of paper in our meeting since. Somebody asked me, said, are you still getting people from probation? How would I know? It's none of my business. None of my business where they come from. It's not my job to check motives and credentials. It's my job to welcome drunks, not brand them somehow. So you're at a point, I think, in a group where you can take some actions. I keep looking at you, Mary, because you were talking about that CPC thing, that it's not a matter of just globally trying to do good. You can target stuff, and geez, how many people have been relieved of the bondage of that paper just by simple little action? Yeah. And so, to me, those are vital things that kind of make AA come alive and be viable, in trying to do some effective work. You had something back there, I believe? You got now. I'm quick. I got you. Yeah, it's yours. Oh, Joe. I'm sorry, Joe.
My name is Joe G, and I'm my home group is the Black Chip meeting, Pine Castle. You know what a black chip is? Are you familiar with a black chip? It's the resentment chip.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I chair a meeting every Saturday, and there's not every Saturday, there's one or two that has to have their paper signed. And I won't sign it until the meeting is over. But I agree with you, it's a terrible way to send somebody to AA. And the chairperson is usually always busy right after the meeting ends. You're looking for the money and so forth, etc. But I try to grab some of them and talk to them. And you have to do it because there's somebody that I know that's been coming pretty regular, and she has to get her papers signed. And she resents it like hell.
Yeah.
It's like the fact when they come with that paper, I might as well hand them the black chip also. So I think that should be corrected. Now, I also happen to work with the sheriff's office a little bit. And they have no matter. The court says you must have that paper signed, otherwise you're breaking it. And there's no way they can get out of it. But it's a terrible way for this to go on because he's an alcoholic maybe because he's sent there. And if you're caught drunk driving, you are an alcoholic. It's a matter of whether you admit it or not. But the fact is, how do we change it? It takes a little bit more power than just a group to change it. But I'm sure every group that comes in, that are people with the papers, I'm going to tell you something. I also had to have a paper signed. And not from the court or the state, but by my employer. They were fortunate enough to send me to a rehab, but I traveled, just like you, quite a bit. And places, I was in a different city sometimes, all the time, and I just couldn't get to a meeting. And then they said, you must make a meeting. So that's what happened with the paper. So I know how these people feel with this paper. I used to feel, I was 40 years old and I had to have a paper signed by some people. And I had a resentment, a tremendous resentment. And to be honest with you, I'm sober because I really wanted to keep my job, not for that lousy paper.
Yeah. Let me tell you one thing about where do you go. You got to go to the decision-making level, whatever that is, policy-making level. When we start, and please don't read that Tom I is a hero in this. It's just a matter that I had the platform and the bully pulpit, and I was able to do something. But the prison system in North Carolina, the policies were just prohibitively slanted against volunteers. They just made it such an ordeal to get in that most people would change their mind before they got through the paperwork. And so it was just a bear of a deal. And so we tried to do a couple of little things just on the goodwill side, and it clearly wasn't going to work. So I went to the director of prison. I said, man, we got a big mess here. We need to do something. Now this is what happened. There was a little more to the conversation than that. But I didn't put him against the wall or anything. I treated him like a leader in state government, and I treated myself like an honorable citizen who's trying to provide a service to my state. I didn't go in there hat in hand. I went in there as a responsible person trying to be responsible. There's a real key to that. And so we got along great. The 14th of October, we finished, and I say we because before it was over, he asked me and the guy replacing me to join them in drafting a policy that would be suitable to us. And the operative phrase was always, can you live with this? They gave me a counter proposal bolder than I put in. And I said, I think we can live with that. And so the 14th of October, we came out with a policy that absolutely opens the doors of the correction system in North Carolina. Now, all that was is not political weight or anything like that. These were two sensible folks coming to a meeting of the minds and then assembling some people to do a job. And so it can happen. You know, it's a matter of how we go about it in a responsible, sensible kind of a way. Well, that man saw we were trying to do something, and he saw that those problems. In fact, he wrote me a letter saying that he recognized that the policies were ruling out the services we were trying to provide. And so when he saw that, he'd take a fool. Well, I don't go into all that, but yeah, George said thanks.
I was just going to say on those slips in California, we taught them to sign them themselves. But, I think Judge Leon Emerson down in California, I think, is the one that started those things. But I wanna get back to what you talked about there, the structure thing in the meeting. I don't care where these groups come from, whether they're newcomers or the rest of it, what we need to do is make sure they understand this is Alcoholics Anonymous, not anything's anonymous. Now, we need to do that in a kind way sometime. If you got a meeting that's not loaded up with newcomers, maybe if you get a newcomer, spend 10 minutes talking about step one and, you know, instead of the whole hour reading the book like the gentleman here said. I don't care. And get to know these people, you know, like you said. And I'm guilty of that. I don't do it. I go to meetings sometime because, you know, we're traveling around the country now. I don't have a home group. Mine's way out there in Port Hueneme, California, the one you were in. You know, I'm a long distance from it. But you be the example for these new people coming in, and you make sure that they understand this is Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. This is not anything's anonymous. Don't hurt their feelings. And front end loaded, like you said, go visit with the people that set this up. Now, I did this once in a meeting a long time ago, sitting by Hazel in a closed meeting and reminded some addicts they were in the wrong place. And the gal called up central office the next day and tried to get me excommunicated from Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, that's not the right way to do it. But the point got made, and somebody got up there and explained to them, it's a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you ain't an alcoholic, it's not that we don't welcome you. It's a closed meeting, and that's for alcoholics only.
Yeah.
We do ourselves a disservice if we don't make sure up front we tell these other people what we're about.
We do them a disservice as well. Do them a disservice. Yeah, Dave, come up here, will you?
Something I want to share with you is that when you, my name's Maureen and I'm an alcoholic. That when you stand up for the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, when you are in a structured group, you will take arrows. You will take arrows from other groups, from even members within your own group sometimes. And it can be very hurtful. It can be very hurtful when you, but when you remember that if you stand for something, you know, you're not going to be falling for anything. And the newcomer needs to see that. The newcomer needs to see that.
Talk to me, Mo.
The newcomer needs to see that we stand for something. One of the other things that we did in my home group, which is the 5:30 happy hour in Oxnard, California.
Smoke a lot, that group, too.
It's certain meetings. We have smoking and non-smoking meetings. Is that we have a newcomer liaison at every single one of our meetings. Someone in that meeting, because our group sponsors a number of meetings, in fact, one every day at 5:30, and then we also have a step study, but we have a newcomer person in each meeting that is responsible to the newcomer. We have a packet that we put together to give to newcomers, and that person in that meeting is responsible for connecting with the newcomer, whether it be, they don't have to raise their hand. If they do, that's well and good. But if it's somebody that we haven't seen at the meetings before, if you have a person in your meeting who is the newcomer liaison, they know who's there regularly and who isn't. And it's their responsibility, they make that commitment, that they go and see that newcomer, that they put their hand out. Because not always, in my case sometimes, it was very difficult. I sponsored a lot of women, and after the meeting was over, I'd get bombarded, and I wouldn't have time to, you know, I couldn't get to that new person. And so if we had somebody responsible, it's a solution.
Thank you. And that's our primary purpose. Yeah, and I've seen that packet. It's a good one. They got a little big book included in that thing, too. Now I have to tell him we only got 8 minutes to go, because he's been known to ask us a very long question.
Okay, this is a question that relates to the theme of the workshop, but I'd appreciate your thoughts on it. I know how to solve it at my home group, and I'm pretty comfortable with solutions to problems where I have some participation directly. But what has been growing as recent as last night is I've got sponsees that I will recommend or suggest a pamphlet or a piece of AA literature so they can find what Alcoholics Anonymous' heartbeat is all about, but they can't find the literature at their home groups or even at their central office sometimes. And I wonder if literature, AA literature, not being available, even a sponsorship pamphlet or a big book at an AA meeting, means that the body's there, but there's no blood for the heart to beat.
Well, it'd surely be a troubling concern. Y'all all understand what you're talking about. If you don't have the material, it's pretty hard to tell where you're meeting. And I always I'm probably one of the world's finest meeting setter-uppers, because I think I've been doing it for 46 years. God ought to be good at it. But I believe it's important, about how a room is set up and what it looks like. I think it's awfully important to have the materials out and the sign out so it looks like Alcoholics Anonymous and it feels like Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I just think those are, in the business world, you call those things silent salesmen, And so if you get tired of this speaker, you just read the tradition or read the slogan or whatever. So I think those things are vital. Just, if nothing else, just the atmosphere. But having material available, I think, is awfully important. The best way in the world I know to distribute material is not through a rack, it's from hand to hand. And take just what you were talking about, taking a pamphlet and saying, here, take a look at this. Sometimes I'll do it and it doesn't even matter whether I'm telling the whole truth or not. I'll just say to somebody, I'll take Members' Eye View. I bet I've given 1,000 of those away, and I always say this is the best written pamphlet in Alcoholics Anonymous. Read it and tell me what you think. Never had anybody disagree. So just getting them reading and having something there, I think is critically important. Yeah.
I'm really happy to be here today. It's been wonderful. I am a member of my home group, is Maitland Beginners Group, which is here, and it's been around for 37 years. And I got sober in New York, and I came from a very, very structured meeting, and have found that there's not very much structure, especially in my home group. And I can't criticize without being willing to do something about it, like you said. I hate to ruffle feathers, and I don't know how to go about infusing it with some we are a beginners group, and it's very important to have. We have a lot of people bust in from treatment centers too, but we have a lot of newcomers at our meeting, and I always speak to them. But I think it's really important to have we had sponsorship chairs.
Yeah.
They talk to them about sponsorship, and it's also kind of along the lines with the newcomer thing. But how to go about making some of those changes without being that uppity.
Well, it's a tough deal because a group conscience is a powerful thing, especially if it doesn't agree with you. I think that's the kind of thing. I have started a number of groups because I just didn't feel like I was able to carry out. My belief is this, and maybe you could think about it this way. My group is not only gives me, but a group is an extension of me. If my home group doesn't deliver what I promise a newcomer, by word or deed, then I'm lying to him. And so if I pump somebody up to say this is a wonderful program and you can get involved and you can have a life and that kind of stuff, if my group doesn't deliver, then I'm phony, And so that's the way I have to evaluate, And so if I'm in a group and I just don't feel that I'm able to get that kind of a base, because that's who I am. And so when I look at how I deal with a newcomer, my group is a part of how I deal with the newcomer. And so those all sort of come into the equation with me. I want to work with folks as long as I can. But I'll tell you this, I have pushed an awful lot of ropes in the last 46 years. A lot of ropes. And in this program, and I don't mean it in a hostile way, but in this program, I've had to learn to recognize that sometimes I just have to part company with folk. There are a lot of people who cherish the status quo. The status quo makes me brain dead. I am not interested in some sort of a little caretaker maintenance deal. I'm interested in a dynamic program of recovery. And so when I'm around people that are not, into some similar kind of a deal, I got to watch out. Well, I'll start vegetating if I don't watch it. So that's a weighty kind of a thing. I was in a group one time that I messed with for 5 years. And what I was really trying to do was impose my will on them. And with remarkable success, totally unremarkable success. The podium, just one illustration. The podium, now I handle enough podiums, even though I don't pay much attention to them, I know where to put a podium so that you got proper eye contact and proper proximity to a group. Well, they put the one too far back, about 20 feet, and you felt like you were in a different meeting. So I never had a group conscience, but every once in a while I'd sneak it up. And I'd get it properly placed where it ought to be. Next week it's right back there. Imposing my will on folks is usually a very fruitless activity. So that's kind of a wandering, bouncing around response to that, but that is a dilemma. It truly is. Yeah. Last one, I believe. Yeah.
Tom, my name's Steve. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Steve.
And you were mentioning the balance between open meetings and closed meetings, and I think you were stressing the importance of closed meetings to alcoholics and newcomers. And you also mentioned an open newcomer meeting. Mm-hmm. How do you determine the right balance in the city of open and closed meetings, and how would you correct that balance?
I don't think about a city. I think about it one drunk at a time and one group at a time. And then the city will grow from that. But what I like to look at is that when folk come into AA, most of them are about like me. When I came in, I didn't have a clue what I was. I mean, I'd done enough speed to launch one of those rockets over there. But I'm not a drug addict. I was just a greedy drunk. Yeah, and I didn't want to end parties, But it took me a while to sort that out. I didn't really believe I was alcoholic, So I like a place that's not challenging to that. Kind of like George was saying, you got to get folk to the right place, but sometimes they got to have some information to know what the place is. And the way I look at it, and the reason I like an open newcomer meeting, is because an awful lot of addicts wind up getting sent to AA, and oftentimes we'll tell them, well, just compromise and say you're alcoholic anyway. And that's a setup. That is really a setup. And it's a, I think it's important to bear in mind that Narcotics Anonymous started with a group of addicts who couldn't find what they needed in AA. And that's where it came from. And when we try to get people just to patronizingly say to them, come on and act like us, a big disservice. And so I like a newcomer meeting to be a place where you can talk about things without getting into a lot of rancor. The only problems, we've had 2 problems in 5 years in our group, both of them caused by one of our members who simply didn't know how to say something to somebody without an attacking tone. So both of them were provoked by our folk. And I find it to be a great place. I make it my business to have some real good connections with some good NA members. Because I don't want to just say go to NA, I want to say call Willie. His number is this. And then that way, the way I look at it, a lot of junkies come to us by mistake. The least they ought to be able to count on from us is a warm welcome and guidance to the right place. If they can't get that here, where you get it, man, this is the last stop on the bus line. And so that, to me, is the value of a newcomer group where you can sort of sort stuff out. And I just want it to be a real useful tool in our group. It turns out it's a tool in our whole city because we're the only group that's got a real dedicated newcomer program. And so there's a hunger for that kind of a thing. Yeah, George?
Just one quick thing, you're not doing your business, but can we thank Chet and the ladies that put this thing together by giving them a hand or whoever did it?
Will you leave off the plane fare? Yeah, let's do it. It was a good job. Good job. Yeah, Mo?
One of the other, in our travels, we have seen where there is a meeting and it may have 30 people in it. and they do the preamble, they do the reading, they choose a topic, and then they break up into smaller groups and go to different corners. And those meetings, usually, most of them, have one area that is for new people. So they always have a newcomer meeting at every single meeting. And that also solves the newcomer problem.
Yeah.
But again, you have a newcomer liaison that takes those newcomers to their side of the room.
Just bear in mind it's our primary purpose. Now, normally I close with ripples and flourishes and some moving poem. That's a lie. Normally what I do is just quit. Thank you a lot. Thank you. Before you all